Hi, I'm Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. This week's guest is James Pankow, founder, trombonist, songwriter, arranger of the great group Chicago. This interview is just too long to make one show out of, so this is going to be part one of two parts. We're going to start at the beginning of Chicago until they became the band that we all know and love. Sit back and get ready for a great interview. James Pankow, part one. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with James Pankow. Until just recently, I pronounced James Pankow, but now I'm doing it right.
Everybody does. I stopped correcting people, but because we're official,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to put Joe on the record, okay?
Yes.
Okay, now that that's been said.
So this is a whole lot of fun for me because I've told the story a lot of times. I was riding down Music Row, 1975. And we had a band that we were doing original. We wanted to be Chicago Junior, you know. And,
Thank you.
Well, and you're welcome. And so I'm going down Music Row, and like we were just talking about, little bitty houses, there's nothing, you know. And then all of a sudden, CBS Records. I went, whoa, got to pull in. This is the label Chicago's on. So I walk in, and because of that, it changed my whole life because I ended up meeting the president of the record label, who happened to be sitting in the lobby. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's the reason I pulled into CBS, was because you guys were on CBS.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And, but they already had you, so they didn't need us. So, and we weren't y'all anyway. There's only one you. And so, one thing on this show we wanted to do here is not just talk about things that fans want to know, but also musicians. So, you know, we're doing a couple of these in one day, and so just a little while ago, Steve Cropper left, and we talked about, you know, what kind of guitar did you play and why. So let's go ahead and do this for the horn players out there. What do you play? Why did you play what you played, a particular brand, and why did you pick the instrument you picked?
Well, you know, trombone was not really my first choice. Honestly, I was 10 years old. My parents decided that it was absolutely necessary to channel this energy that was obviously coursing through me. Anytime they put a record on, I started grooving, and to the point where my mother said that my crib would start shaking because even before I could walk, I would react to music. I was 10 years old, and again, the boys' dorm bedroom was above the kitchen, and I'd be up there doing my homework, and my mom and dad would be in the kitchen getting ready for dinner, and they'd be hearing on the floor upstairs radiating into the kitchen ceiling, and it drove them nuts. It was like a jackhammer around, and my dad would take a broom and hit the ceiling of the kitchen to make me stop. I was tapping my feet or tapping my pencil on the desk in school, driving the teachers nuts. So they took me to the tryouts in the church basement. Okay, you're going to take me to these tryouts. I'm looking at all these instruments. The drums was my first choice, but there were 100 kids in line, and I got exasperated with waiting. So I went to the guitar line. Essentially, I wanted to play an instrument that was cool, that was usable in playing music of my peers, rock and roll, whatever. And then, as I'm standing in more lines, waiting to try the instruments, my mom and dad, accompanied by the band director, approached me and pointed to the trombone that was on a table. There were no kids standing around the trombone.
Yes, of course.
Nor myself. And they argued that if I played trombone, I would have no competition. I'd have a much better chance of advancing myself, playing lead, you know, and excelling on that instrument. And I looked at that thing and I said, I'm not taking that sewer pipe home. No way. Well, the band director chimed in, and you know, he was a trumpet player. He said, hey man, you know, brass instruments are really cool. They talked me into it. This continued. I continued practicing, taking lessons, playing in the school band. Then came high school, and my parents made a sacrifice because with 9 kids, we couldn't afford private schooling and stuff like that. But they made the sacrifice of putting me in Notre Dame High School for Boys in Niles, Illinois. And there was a band director there, Father George Wiskirk, and we won the state jazz band competition every year I was there. I got a scholarship with my horn, and wound up going to Quincy College, a small liberal arts college in central Illinois. Great band music department, great band director, trombonist, and a very wicked teacher. Tough. I hated the guy because he made me do it. He taught me discipline. I had no excuses. I had no way to squirm out of it. After a year at Quincy, I came back to Chicago for the summer, and I put a band together, and got an agent, started working. I started making serious coin, serious money. Well, I didn't want to give that up because I was creating income with my horn. Hey, what a concept. I'm getting paid to play music. I like this. So I called Quincy, and I gave them the bad news. I said, you know, I can't come back to Quincy because I will give up the income that I started to generate with my horn. And Charlie Winking, as disappointed as he was, he had to admit, he said, you know, we go to school to learn how to make a living at music. You're doing that. I can't argue with that. Good luck to you. I enrolled at DePaul University then in Chicago as a sophomore, where I was to meet Walter Perizader, Lee Loughnane, Terry Kath, and the people that were to become this band.
We'll be right back and hear the beginnings of the group Chicago.
The Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum has been celebrating the men and women who make the music of our lives since 2006. The Musicians Hall of Fame is the one and only museum in the world that honors the talented musicians who played on the greatest recordings of all time.
It's a music city, huh? It's, I mean, where else are you going to get the cats, all the cats that are in this room?
The Grammy Museum Gallery at the Musicians Hall of Fame is an interactive facility that allows guests to explore the process of making a recording. Take drum lessons with Ringo Starr. Sing on stage with Ray Charles. Write a song with Desmond Child. Rap with Nelly. Or be Garth Brooks in our recording studio experience. Located in the heart of downtown Nashville, in the first floor of the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Come see what you've heard at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum.
Hi, I'm Tyler Rudesheim, Director of Events at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. Located within the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium, the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum is one of the most unique spaces in downtown Nashville, offering a versatile environment that caters to events of all sizes. Your guests will love this truly Nashville experience. We specialize in corporate dinners, music industry events, receptions, and more. Contact me today to book your next event.
Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with James Pankow. James, so we were just getting into, you were just meeting Terry Kath and Walter and what was to become Chicago.
Okay, I'm back at DePaul, and I'm practicing in the practice room at DePaul. I'm a new student, a transfer student, and I keep seeing the practice rooms were these soundproof little cubicles, you know, and they had a door with a little window in the door, and they were soundproofed, you know, and I'd go in there after classes, and I'd shed on the trombone, I'd practice, and I kept seeing this face in the window of the door. I mean, a lot of people would kind of peek in and, see who was in there. But there was one face in particular that kept coming by and looking at me. And he wasn't just seeing who was in it, he was looking at me like, I'm onto you, man. I'm onto you. And I kept seeing his face. And finally, he knocked on the door. And I opened the door and he said, dude, you're probably wondering who the heck I am because you keep seeing my face in the window, but I just had to tell you, I really like your playing. And I'm Walt Perizzator, and I have an idea that I'd like to run by you. And he talked to me about forming a rock and roll band with an indigenous horn section. Not just frosting on the cake, doing riffs, but a horn section that was one of the main characters in the music. He wasn't quite sure how that might play out, or maybe he wasn't quite sure of musically what he was trying to explain. But the idea was to have a rock and roll band with a lead horn section, just like another vocal, and the concept was fascinating because that hadn't been done. And I went, yeah, man, I want to talk some more about this. I'm in, yeah.
What year was this?
This was 1967. And he introduced me to another student by the name of Lee Lockney, trumpet player. And he had talked to Lee about the idea. And Lee said, so Jimmy, what do you think? I went, I think it's amazing. I think it's worth pursuing. But what are we going to do about a rhythm section? I mean, okay, we got our horn section here. We got a saxophone, trumpet, and trombone. What about a rhythm section? And Walt said, well, the missing links are on the way out. And the missing links were a local club act that Walt and Danny Serafin and Terry Kath had been members of. And they were going away. The leader of the band had very little or no talent, and his father booked the band. So all that was to them was income, but it was not fun. Mm-hmm. So Terry and Danny and Walt decided to break off and proposed this idea to some worthwhile horn players. Fortunately, I had transferred to DePaul, and I came into Walt's radar, and he invited me to be the trombone player.
I can't imagine there ever being anybody else, though. Can you?
Well, who knows? Who knows? Of course, you could.
I don't think so.
I just happened to be. I was blessed enough to be at the right place at the right time. We had Danny Serafin, our drummer. We had Terry Kath, a guitar player. We had the horn section. We needed a bass player and a keyboard player, perhaps. And who was going to sing vocals? Well, Terry sang, but none of the three of us horn players were really lead vocalists, per se. We had good pitch. We were capable of singing backgrounds, but we needed another strong vocalist, bass player, keyboards for him. Danny Serafin and Walt heard about this guy that was in a club on the South Side. His name was Bobby Charles, and his band was the Wanderers. He wrote all his own material. He played the crap out of it, and he sang amazingly well. And they asked him if he could play B3 because it had bass pedals. And that way we could have a keyboard and a bass and not have to pay another guy to play bass, because he sang too. And he was playing a Wurlitzer, some electric piano at that club, and he said, yeah, sure, I can play B3. I can play Hammond, which was total BS. He had never played a Hammond, but he loved this idea they proposed so much that he was willing to stick his neck out and go buy a used organ and shed on it until we all convened for the first time.
And they're not cheap.
No.
Not even then.
No, he probably mortgaged most of his life to get that. It was an M3, a cut-down version of a B3 with the bass pedals. And we met at Walt's parents' house, and for the first time, I had just recently met Terry Kath and Danny Serafin, and before we met at Walt's parents' house, all of us, Walt arranged to have all of us meet at his apartment on the north side of Chicago. He had a bottle of whiskey on the table. We each poured a shot, and we took a shot and shook hands and agreed and promised to commit all of our time and energy into making this idea happen. Terry just starts, I feel good. Da, 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 da. Terry loved James Brown. And we started jamming on James Brown. And Danny was like the funkiest soul drummer I had ever heard. And Robert was on the bass pedals on the Hammond. He had done some serious shredding because he was right on it. And Papa's got a brand new bag. Papa's got a brand new bag. And it was like, holy cow. It was like we had been playing together forever. It was just.
Well, I thought Terry started at bass.
So good.
Terry was playing bass guitar originally, wasn't he?
Oh, he was playing bass with the Missing Links.
But he switched over to guitar.
We hired him to be our guitar player.
Okay, all right.
He played both, but they needed in the Missing Links. The leader of the band, whose dad booked the band, was the guitar player, and he sucked. So, but Terry was relegated to play bass, and Terry was an amazing bass player. But in the context of Chicago, which wasn't really Chicago yet, it was just a bunch of guys. He was looked at by us as hopefully being our guitar player. And when he started playing guitar, we were going crazy. I mean, he was playing the funk. I mean, Prince would have kissed his feet. I mean, he was. I mean, I closed my eyes. It could have been Steve Cropper. It could have been, as good as it gets. And so we all realized that we had something. The horn section, we were just doing head licks. And it was fun, and it was smoking. But that wasn't the finality of this idea, this path that we chose. That fell in my lap because I had already begun arranging for my outfit and had been working with Bill Russo, Chicago Jazz Ensemble, and pickup player for big bands coming through the city. So I was already, I had already begun doing instrumental arrangements, but not like this. And this gave me a whole palette to do anything I heard. For the time being, it wasn't a concern because we had to build a reputation and pay our rent. And to do that, we got an agent who booked all the nightclubs in the Midwest. We wound up going out and getting cheap, flashy suits, and we were kind of a half-baked Vegas show band. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Club Gigi. We're going to warm you up with a little T-bottom rice, and then we're going to take a little break. We'll see you there. Remember, the more you drink, the better we sound. And we'd be doing, we'd start the night, slow, this one club owner who owned this place called the Attic in Milwaukee. He was a very powerful guy. He was a Greek. He owned a couple city blocks of Milwaukee, and this nightclub was his playground. And he'd invite all his cronies there, and hold court at the bar, And, now you guys, you're a good bunch of guys, man. You got a good band. But let me tell you something. In my club, you got to warm them up. They come in here after work, you got to start them off with belly rubbers. With what? Belly rubbers, like Satin Doll, Misty. I'm so misty, I'm too much. Start them off slow. Get them drinking. Then, second set, third set, you can start hitting them with that soul stuff. Okay, Zoe, whatever you say, fine. So we'd come into the club and we'd start with the soft, Satin Doll, Lonely Bull, Tijuana Brass, and onward it went, downward it went. Finally, when it got to about the third set, we'd be able to start, sneaking in, got that you did, when you did, and I thank you, and I'm a soul man, James Brown, The Temptations, Hold On, I'm Coming, and one thing led to another, and then, the set built, and people were rocking. We started packing that place. It was arguably the biggest nightclub in the Midwest. It was on a second floor, and it was a big place. It held 700 or 800 people. And after a couple of weeks, the word got out, and we started packing that place, even on weeknights. And Zoe was very happy with it. But also about that time, we started working the circuit. We'd work Peoria, we'd work Madison, Wisconsin. We're working these clubs for about, a year or so. All of a sudden, Robert, who had been writing songs all along, started bringing original music into the band. And we loved it. Before we started doing completely original music, however, we first experimented with doing Chicagoized. At that time, we weren't Chicago. We were the Big Thing. This mob boss, this mob agent in Chicago. You guys, I got a good name for you guys. The Big Thing. Because you guys sound like you could be the next big thing. You know what I mean? So let's make the name The Big Thing. Ting, T-I-N-G. The Big Thing. Joe D. As The Big Thing, we slowly evolved into doing customized arrangements of popular songs. But the club owners wanted to hear top 40. R&B was the top 40 at that time. Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, The Temptations, Four Tops, the Rascals came along. We did some of that, the Righteous Brothers, Aretha, James Brown. That was all the hit music of the day, which was great for us because it did have horns in it, although the horns played more of a secondary role. So we started taking a lot of these songs and customizing them, putting little instrumental stretch outs in them with horn ensembles where there was nothing but the horns playing instrumental melody. And this started to become really inspiring. It started shaping a direction for me. The guys were digging it. The guys in the band were digging it. They were going, man, this is awesome. How did you do that? Well, I listened to the vocal and I just kind of sing a solo in my head around the vocal that complements it. And then I voice it where it works. It's just kind of I'm humming an alternate melody that complements the vocal melody that's already there. And it seems to work. But as soon as we started putting these original arrangements and music into our club sets, we got fired. we got fired from one place after another. And we were on stage at the Attic. The place was packed. And we showed up at the club. We had been slicking our hair back, right, with Vaseline, you know, because in those days, you know, the Beatles had come along, you know, and, you know, the Beatles, you know, the long hair, you know, and so the long hair was forbidden. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. Yeah, well, you're hippies, you know, you're against the war in Vietnam, you're demonstrating, you know, Abby Hoffman, all that. So if you had long hair, you were a communist, you know, a commie sicko, as they called us. So we used to grease our hair back, you know, or put it in a ponytail or whatever. This night, you know, before this show, we were just beginning the second week of a 2-week engagement, and we were at the motel, and we had all taken some, shall we say, mind enhancers. And Terry Kath went out and bought Sgt. Pepper, and we put that record on, and it changed everything. We were psychedelic, and we were listening to Sgt. Pepper, Lucy in the Sky with Diamond, Magical Mystery Tour. Hold up to the mystery tour. George Martin, man. Now that's horns. That's orchestral. That's melodic. And it's unique. And that's when we decided we're going to be us. Screw these clubs. We're going to be us. But that was a tough decision because we were looking a gift horse in the mouth, which was our bread and butter, which was our food on the table. Do we roll the dice and be us and continue to get fired looking for work? Or do we play the game and just do us on the side for our own amusement until the right people hear it? Because we'll never pay our rent. Well, let's start by doing it tonight. Okay. So we showed up at the Attic. We went on stage with our suits inside out and our hair was long. We let our hair down. And the club owner's at the bar with all his cronies getting his butt kissed. We launch into when I won your love, you were everything to me. How could I be such a fool by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention? And we carved it. And as we're doing this and getting outside with it, the club owner turns and looks at us like he wanted to kill us. He gets up off his bar stool, walks over to the stage. Mind you, the club is packed. He walks right up to the front of the stage and grabs Walt's pants leg. And he's doing this. And what he was saying is, Walt, you're all a bunch of you're fired. Get the hell out of my club. And I'm going, Walt, what did he say? What did he say? Well, I think we're fired. Walt gets on the mic and goes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Everybody chill out, relax, have a drink. You know, the more you drink, the better we sound. As he's saying this, Robert Lamb dives off the stage and grabs the club owner by the throat.